All right, so today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take what looks like a super dry academic document, a PhD entrance exam, and we're going to crack it open. Because hidden inside, there's actually this incredible story about what it really means to be a scholar in today's world. So it all boils down to this one big question, right? What does it really take to push the boundaries of what we know? I mean, is it just about memorizing a ton of facts? Or is there something else? Something deeper that separates someone who just knows things from someone who can actually create new knowledge? Well, the answer, and this is the cool part, isn't in some dusty old textbook. It's actually hidden in plain sight, right inside the questions themselves. And that's what we're digging into today. We've got a PhD entrance exam for zoology, and believe me, it's way more than just a test. It's a blueprint for the modern scientist. So by taking apart this blueprint, question by question, we can start to see all the different hats a top-tier researcher has to wear. It's not just one job. It's like 4 or 5 jobs all rolled into one. It reveals this surprisingly complex person. And check this out. This is where it gets really weird and really interesting. On one side of the test, you have this super specific biology question. Describe the caste system in termites. Deep, right? But then on the same test, you get this. What's the full form of BIT? A computer term. So what gives? Why on earth does a biologist need to be an expert in both termites and tech? That's the mystery we're going to unravel. Okay, so let's start breaking this down. We'll begin with the most obvious piece of the puzzle. The first hat you have to wear, no surprise here, is that of the domain expert. You gotta know your stuff. This is the bedrock for everything else. And the exam makes it crystal clear just how deep that knowledge has to go. I mean, look at these topics. We're not talking about simple trivia here. You need to understand everything from the nitty-gritty of how fatty acids are broken down to the big picture of population genetics. This stuff is the absolute, non-negotiable price of admission. You have to know your field cold. But here's the thing. Being a walking encyclopedia of your subject, it's not enough anymore. Not even close. The exam shows us that the modern scholar also has to be a kind of data detective. You need to be able to speak the language of numbers and statistics. Take this, for example. One question literally lays out the 4 steps of doing survey research. And this is so important because it shows that science isn't just a random hunt for facts. No, it's a super systematic process. You start with sampling, you collect your data, you analyze it, and then you figure out what it all means. That structure, that methodical approach, is everything. And it gets even more specific. The test dives into concepts like sampling error. Now, that might sound technical, but it's absolutely crucial. It's about knowing that your data isn't perfect, that there's a difference between your little sample and the entire population. A good researcher has to understand those limits. It's about being precise, for sure, but also being humble about what the numbers can truly tell you. So what's the bottom line here? It's that ideas are one thing, but in today's world, you have to be able to prove it with numbers. That's what being a data detective is all about. It's about having the skills to back up your own work and, just as importantly, to critically look at everyone else's. All right, so we've got the expert and the analyst. 2 hats down. But the exam throws a curveball and reveals a third identity, one that's totally a product of our times. The modern researcher has to be a digital native. You have to speak the language of computers. And to show you what I mean, let's do a little acronym blitz straight from the exam questions. You ready? First up, bit. What is it? A binary digit, the most basic piece of the puzzle. Okay, next, RAM. That's random access memory, the computer's short-term thinking space.
Then you've got the big one, CPU, the central processing unit. You know, the brain of the whole operation.
And they even get into the weeds with stuff like ASCII, the American Standard Code for Information Interchange. This isn't just surface-level stuff, you guys. This is expecting real digital literacy. So, this brings us right back to our big question from the start. Why does a zoologist, of all people, need to know this stuff? Well, because modern science just doesn't happen without technology. It's impossible. Think about it. You're running massive simulations, analyzing huge genetic data sets, collaborating with people on the other side of the planet. Speaking the language of machines, it's not a bonus skill anymore. It's essential. Okay, so we've covered the technical side of things, but now we're going to shift gears from the technical to the philosophical, because this exam reveals one last and maybe most important layer of who a researcher needs to be. They have to be a mindful scientist, someone who operates with a clear moral and intellectual compass.
And honestly, this next part might be the most surprising thing in the whole exam. There's a question that quotes the poet Rabindranath Tagore. Yeah, a poet on a science exam. It says, "A lamp can never light another lamp unless it continues to burn its own flame." This isn't testing your knowledge of biology. It's testing your mindset. It's looking for a person who gets that to teach others. You have to be constantly learning yourself. It's about that inner fire.
And when you pull a few of these philosophical questions together, you start to see this kind of researcher's code emerge. The test hammers home that science demands objectivity. It says your job isn't just to dump facts on students, but to help them learn how to learn for themselves. And it calls the whole thing a scientific undertaking, which is just a powerful way of saying this is a serious, ethical, and deeply purposeful mission.
So let's put it all together. You've got the domain expert, the data detective, the digital native, and the mindful scientist. What happens when you mash all of those into one person?
Well, what becomes really clear is that this test isn't just a random collection of trivia questions. Not at all. It's a filter. A very, very carefully designed filter. Its only job is to find that one person who can be all of these things at the same time.
So there you have it, the four faces of a modern scholar. And what's key is how they all connect. You see, you can't be a great data detective if you don't have that deep domain expertise. And you can't do any modern data analysis if you're not a digital native. And honestly, none of it really matters if you don't have the ethical compass of the mindful scientist holding it all together. They all depend on each other.
So in the end, the person who aces this exam isn't just one thing. They're a specialist, a statistician, a technologist, and a philosopher, all wrapped up in one package. That is the blueprint for the person who gets to push human knowledge forward today. And that kind of leaves us with one final big question to chew on. We've just mapped out the researcher of today, but think about it. Our world is only getting more complex. Our tech is getting crazier. Our problems are more interconnected than ever. So what's next? What new faces, what new skills will be added to this blueprint in the future? What will the researcher of tomorrow really look like?